In this video, let's talk about models. In web development, a model is a representation that just helps us understand how something works or how it is structured. This is part of a three-part paradigm that you've probably heard of, but it's okay if you haven't. But you may have heard of the MVC model of web or software development. Models are the M in MVC. The other letters stand for view and controller, but we'll be getting into those in the next few videos. The MVC model is really useful for thinking about our applications and being able to reason about different parts of it independently without always getting bogged down by the whole thing. Kind of in a similar way to how the Jamstack breaks apart the previous monolithic architecture, the MVC model helps us break apart and work on different parts of our programs independently. This helps lead to a greater generalization of behavior, so less specific hard-coded things and more generalized programmatic things, which encourages reuse in other projects, and it just helps provide us with an easy way to think about different parts of functionality. Models tell the rest of the application what it is actually working with. The view is going to take our models and display the information. The controllers is going to modify how and when that happens, but the model is the most basic building block of what actually is the data that you're working with. This may sound a little familiar because I just said in the last video that the most fundamental basic building block of Strapi was our content types, which are used to define the structure of our content and data. So content types and our collections are innately tied to models. They are actually the direct way of creating models in a Strapi project. What we just did in the last video where we created the example article content type, when we hit save and it said that we were waiting for the server to restart, Strapi was actually creating the actual MongoDB model of the content structure that we had just defined. That is what is so cool about Strapi, and one of the things that makes it so powerful and so convenient, that it's able to provide us with such an easy to use and easy to understand interface while handling all of the database complexity and syntax for us. Let's go take another look at our project and see the model that Strapi created for us. I'm here in the terminal or in your Windows command line, and I'm going to go ahead and open up the project folder or the backend folder in a code editor so we can take a look at the structure of our Strapi project. Alright, and we'll end up going through all of this throughout the course, but for now we're just going to get into the part on our model that we had just created. So we can go ahead and open up the API section of our backend. And if you look at that, you see that we already see article. We see the one content type or collection type that we had just created in the previous video. Let's go ahead and open that up. And inside of article, you can see we have config, controllers, models, and services. Like I said, we'll get into controllers and all the rest of this later. For now, let's just stick to models. So let's go ahead and open up the models folder. Models represent the database's structure, and it's split into two separate files. The first is a JavaScript file that contains the model options. And then the second is a JSON file that represents the actual structure of the data stored in our database. Let's first go ahead and open up the article.settings.json. If we start at the top, we can see it's got a kind. So what kind of data is this? And it is a type of collection. What is the name of that collection? It is articles. What is the specific name of the model itself? A single article. And then options such as increments and timestamps. Okay, and this is all MongoDB stuff, which again, I think is really cool that we don't have to really know that much about, and we don't have to write any of it ourselves, but it's created automatically from Strapi. Okay, and if we go down, then we see the attributes. And these are going to be all the fields that we had just defined as our content types. So you can see the field of title, content, rating, and user that we had defined, as well as all the different options for those, such as the fact that it's a string, it's required, it's unique, the max length, and the min length. So all the options, everything that we had seen from our Strapi interface, except that now it's actually in MongoDB syntax and structure as an appropriate model of our data. Let's scroll down here and you can see that's all it has, but the user, if we had the actual user associated with it, it would have the actual name of the user, but for now it still just has the fact that it's related to the user model. So every time we hit save on a new content or collection type, that is creating or updating this model, which lets our MongoDB database understand the information that we're feeding it. You really don't have to know any specifics about MongoDB, but I just wanted you guys to be aware of the fact that this is happening, kind of understand what's going on here in case you ever in the future need to do any advanced or complex database manipulation. So here's the actual model for our data, but let's open up the article.js. Here you can see that it's empty right now. We've got an empty module.exports, but it says read the documentation to customize this model. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that link and open up a new window here. And you can see that it's titled Lifecycle Hooks, which hopefully you're familiar with from React lifecycle hooks, such as component will mount, component will unmount, and others. Similarly, we also have lifecycle hooks available for the models in our application. We actually have lifecycle hooks available for each of these different functions, such as find one, create, update, delete, and we'll get more into these in the next couple of videos of where all these are coming from and what they are. But these are essentially the functions that allow you to interact with your model. So find a list of articles, find one specific article, create an article, update an article, etc. So what these lifecycle hooks allow you to do are, for example, here, before create, or you could do after find, if we go here, before create or after create. So before or after one of these functions is called, you can execute your own business logic. So one thing that we'll actually use this for is for adding and automatically creating a Stripe ID for our users whenever they sign up for our application. Whenever a user goes to make a purchase, we want to already have a Stripe ID associated with them to just cut out one extra step of the checkout process. So we'll actually set up a lifecycle method for our model for after a user is created or before. We're going to go and use the Stripe API to generate a Stripe ID and associate that with our user. And these lifecycle methods make it really easy to do stuff like that with your models without having to add a bunch of really complicated logic. This makes it really easy to have the before or after and do whatever you need to do to make sure your data is ready for when your application actually consumes it. Hopefully this gives you a lot better of an idea of what models are and the role that they're playing in our application, and how easy Strapi makes things for us, the way that it abstracts models away for us, and where all we have to really interact with is the content type builder. But this is what's going on behind the scenes, and hopefully that helps you understand what's going on in general even better. So in the next one, let's actually talk a little bit more about what these functions are here, where they're coming from, and how we can use them in our application.